So far, I'm alone, which isn't a bad thing, right? So he will come anyway. So he's basically stuck in a meeting somewhere, he says. So we need to wait a little bit for him. But we can start already, right? That's possible. And today we want to talk about a topic where I think that Dennis and me are actually not 100% on the same boat. Kinda in some areas, but mostly not. And I'm not sure, so we'll find out today. And it's about vibe coding, agentic coding, maybe flow coding today, and what vibe coding is actually not, and what it is. So I posted already about that today, and the idea of vibe coding in general was defined by an ex-Tesla person. I think he was an ex-Tesla person, and it was more like a tongue-in-cheek thing, where we're thinking about how we could do that in the future and what would be a good idea to do that. In fact, the original idea of vibe coding, which is black box coding, so the AI is doing everything regarding the code, and you don't even know the code anymore. You simply don't care about. That is what the vision is, but that is not what's working today. Even though, when we take a look at the adoption of AI, the adoption rate, well, it's a trend which is only going up, but clearly. So there's no discussion here that's a temporary thing with AI, and I would highly recommend to everyone who's listened to that and who's thinking that, hey, that AI thing isn't working anyway, the agentic way isn't working anyway. In my opinion, that is totally wrong. It is definitely working, and but not in the vibe coding sense. And that's the point. It's not about that we suddenly can let the AI do everything. So it is still, we are basically sailing the ship as the captains, which means that we need to exactly know what we put in, and we need to know what we expect. So simply said, the execution of what we would do with our hands is then done by the AI. But all the planning, everything up front is still our responsibility, even though even the planning part can be done by AI, especially when we take a look at agentic coding. So it's not vibe coding, let's say. There we have it. And this is what we want to actually talk about today. But I wait for that, definitely for Dennis. But throughout, so we have 4 different ways of doing coding. The first one is the classical way. So the classic way of coding is we have an editor, we have an IDE, and we do everything ourselves. Every developer does know that way. So that is the very basic way. That's how we've done that for decades, right? And then we had the flow coding idea. This is where we stood in the flow of what we did in the classical way, but we added like a ChatGPT client to that. So there are some parts which we basically ask ChatGPT to help us. So we basically didn't get stuck with Stack Overflow. Instead, we asked the AI for the solution, and we could stay in the flow without interruptions. So that was the first time when we really got into touch with a effective AI help during development. And that was a time when we saw a lot of hallucinations, where we saw a lot of unusable code generations. That was this actual time because it was so far away from the actual context of your code base that it wasn't really helpful. It was okay. We all probably, maybe even everyone, have used that once in a while. Not everyone, but you know what I mean. Most of the people. But it wasn't the greatest thing. And then, so then we saw something like Devin. I remember Devin came out, and I think it was a fake in the very first presentation. But the idea was that we had an agent which could do that continuously. So we could, instead of just asking one question to a GPT, we were suddenly able to do delegated task to a agent, which could then in a loop and a cycle work those things down and even take a look at what is the output and what I need to fix until actually a loop until I get to the desired outcome, which was the task of which was the current task. So in the very beginning, Devin, Cursor came a bit later out, Windsurf, and then of course Claude Code. So today everyone knows Claude Code, and I think Claude Code became the most prominent one. Even though it is the most expensive one, I think, it is one of the most effective thing, and I have worked a lot with it, really a lot with that. And that is what I understand of agentic coding. So you can basically do the planning step together with AI, create basically together with the AI initial prompt, and then go to an execution plan, a testing plan, and then go step by step executing this plan. And so it was involved in the planning, it was involved in the execution, and if you liked, in the review. So you could start a new session when you were actually finished, and then ask Claude Code, for example, to review uncommitted changes based on some guidelines we might have defined in some context files. That was actually helpful as well. So the agent was now involved in all three steps, and all three major steps you do in an IDE. And that is extremely interesting. So that was the first time when I effectively, it was 3 or 4 months ago, I don't know exactly, when I was for the first time seeing that, hey, there is something I really can leverage in order to improve the way of working. So I can plan faster, I can execute faster, I can review faster, and I can even start to see things I wouldn't be able to do myself, because I'm a human being, I'm limited in my cognitive capabilities. And the AI, even though sometimes don't see things, but most of the times it can see things which you cannot. That's a very interesting aspect as well, which I want to mention here. So all in all, the agentic way of coding, so agentic coding, which is not vibe coding, I'm coming to vibe coding in a second, is the actual evolutionary way, which is still a white boxing thing. So it's not black boxing. We care about the code, we review the code, and we commit the code as we have written ourselves. So we understand it. And the problem is, when you do that, there is nothing, basically nothing, which differs the actual action from vibe coding. Which means that if you put in a new prompt or a follow-up prompt or something like that, you can do that by either taking a look at what happens, analyze it, and make a right decision how to proceed with that, or you just go, fix that, right? Or make that button a little larger and put it more to the right, something like that. Okay, the latter one is actually something which worked, because it is something which is working in the UI quite well, because, well, you can do that. Hey there.
I apologize.
There's no need for apologize. So
I have decided rudely to prioritize a different meeting without letting you know. That's on me.
I'm not sure if the audience will forgive you, but we can continue. No problem. That was a joke.
I'm happy to make it up to make it up to them.
Okay, so I think I lost my point. It was about I was going through the initial post of this session today, from classical, flow coding, agentic, and vibe coding, and okay. So the jump, or the possible drift from agentic coding to vibe coding is a real issue. So you can quickly drift into just typing or hacking things in, instead of really doing a disciplined engineering work. That is something which can happen, let's say, really fast. There are no physical guidelines, basically because the prompt is always the same. It is always you who is prompting. So you are the only thing which can basically design this prompt. And if you prompt something without a proper review up front, even a change, which was right now made by the agent, and you basically follow up by, I just took a look at the output, I don't know what actually happened, I just go on from there. This leads to what we then think of vibe coding, and that is what doesn't work. So it can work sometimes, which led you to the idea that it can work, but in reality is you won't cut quality. So actually you cut quality, and you won't meet it, and you won't be able, especially if you work in a team, your results not only may vary, they are actually worse than you should be, because you lose the idea of what is our common idea of quality anyway. So it is very important when I've talked about agentic now. So agentic is actually a very viable way to go. Things like TDD and those kind of things we're talking about helps a lot to achieve that. But you need to be disciplined on your side. That's just the point you need to be. If you are not disciplined, there's just a thin layer in between proper agentic work and vibe coding. And as soon as you cross that line, you have a problem. And you think you can go on, and you read those posts, even from people who are well-known engineers, who say, I go wild into the agent thing. I let the agent do things, and everyone's coming to the same conclusion. On some point, you can't control that anymore, and on some point, you simply revert, because the work to actually fix what happens is larger than to just revert and start again. And that is what I see so often. I see it soft by myself. Sometimes I dare to drift a little bit, but to be honest, if you really want to do it right, if you really want to leverage the AI in planning, execution, reviewing, so all those three parts during the development cycle, you need to stay in agentic flow where you are the captain, you are responsible for everything, you just have an execution help. That's my conclusion of the thing. So I pass the word now to Dennis because I'm waffling. So what do you think about this topic?
I call this the casino effect. You know, like there's a moment of duality between man and machine when you're using the tool in agentic mode and you're coding together. But there's that lure of YOLO mode, of just using your credit card like a slot machine and just going ding 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 ding.
You know, just 25 more cents, which in reality $2 more, right? And then you have $2 more to fix that, and on some point
and I see that sort of almost like gambling like behavior. Like I think vibe coding is interesting because it has that I don't know, like where would I put this? Is this like a dopamine loop? Is it, you know, it has the same effect as doom scrolling your favorite social media. Like that's what
it's fascinating to see as a developer if you can crank something out of a machine by just asking it for it, right? It feels like the genie in the bottle.
Like, no, try again. No, try again. No, try again. No, I
had that. To be honest, now sometimes in the evening I'm sitting there for some kind of early feature and it's not really tested, it's more a prototype, and I just ask, the button is still not visible. No, the button is still not visible. I'm eating my evening meal, and it's not really supposed to be productive anyway, but I see that I basically begging the the agent to finally get to the point to get that thing done. Wait a second. That is something I see in myself, but I would never do that during real work. So real work is so important for me, the company, the outcome of everything, that I don't do that anymore. I have tried it here and there, and it was never really working out. So it is not like it doesn't work at all. It is this is the point. It works sometimes with you reverse the process. Instead of going correctly from the beginning, you just vibe it and then you correct it in the end. But the outcome is less quality. That's a problem.
I'm going to say something controversial now.
Uh-oh.
I think vibe coding is normal. Like that. I'm trying not to sound crazy, but
tell it.
I think pre-AI developers were just vibe coding. Pre-AI, they were just, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't write any tests. I'm just see debugger, right? Like that debugger flow. That's also
I know what
coding,
you mean,
right? And part of what I do is like therapy for teams and technical training, and I teach people TDD. The vast majority of developers that I talk to, they don't do TDD. Now, if I compare the people who did TDD pre-ChatGPT, pre-GPT, before GPT, before OpenAI, let's just call it before AI, as an agreement semantically here on this session today, before AI, 2020 and before. People who are doing TDD pre-AI, they are super successful with Cloud Code especially, post-AI. Because they have a good workflow. They saw that if they make the workflow even stricter, faster, and smaller, the AI can produce very good results.
Yes.
Results to the degree that they don't feel negatively impacted by the practice. But if you're not doing TDD or something equivalent, so you don't have to do TDD. So TDD is just like some fancy schmancy, sexy word for thinking about your work. You can do event modeling. You can do UML diagrams. You can do
specify your work before you execute.
Yeah, like specify your work so it makes sense. Like translate the business problem to the compiler, write it down, check it for correctness, check for information completeness, check for any kind of logical biases and discrepancies. Check it if it's simple. Right? Think about your problem. Write it down. If it's simple, it's simple to write down. If it's not simple to write down, it probably isn't as simple as you think. And then code it. Like if you're working like that, you don't have to follow TDD. You can maybe have like a similar process. But if it's like, yeah, I have some Gherkin, or I have some scenarios, this is like a user story, this is a use case, that's more behavioral, that's an SLA, this is a non-functional requirement. Overall, there's like these adjacent things, and right now I'm working on this. I'm definitely not working on those. I will interface with those like this. Okay, enough thinking, enough planning. This is enough for me to start coding. And then you start coding. And then you think, okay, I will take this step and that step and that step. If that's how you're working, like in your head, with yourself, with another human being, with a group of human beings, asynchronously with another human being, asynchronously with a machine, and now you add AI to this mix and you teach the AI, it's like, hey, on this step, I need your help. I see no problem with that. What I do is I talk to a product person on a Zoom call. I have the transcript. I hook the transcript into ChatGPT and I ask, hey, this was a conversation translating product requirements to acceptance criteria. And then I want to have the basic acceptance tests written down in TypeScript. Help me out with that in Gherkin format or in Given When Done format. Help me out. And it'll just produce like a useless draft that when I read it, it'll help me like start off from like a better baseline than if I had started from like a blank document. Right? Because it also helps with my procrastination. It helps with sort of maintaining focus. Also, I can do this like mid-conversation, so I can continue the conversation while the AI is doing its thing. And if you do it with Cloud Code and your interface is already set up, awesome. But if you were just coding away until the compiler says no, the computer says no, you just code away. Wow, it should work, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it work? And you're not thinking about how long should I debug this? How should I debug this? There's the factory, the design of the car, the factory floor, the manufacturing line, the car, the pieces of the car. If you're just creating a piece of the car, there's no help for you, right? Like software engineers, we're thinking about how do we create an environment that creates cars very quickly and redesigns the cars very quickly, right? So each story is a little bit different. Each ticket is a little bit different. Each feature is a little bit different. We're not really producing exact replicas of something, but there's an element of a factory. Like when we're trying to cram down the features into the same structure, we call that a feature factory because we don't care about the outcomes that we're producing. We don't care about the business impact that we're having. We just care about feature in, feature out, endless track, endless game, limit costs, limit waste, limit distractions. With AI systems, if you're working in such environments where you might not have ownership, or you might think that just exploring is the best way to go forward, then you've always been vibe coding, but now you have a tool where you can vibe code without touching the keyboard, right? So, and to some degree, that was already normalized before ChatGPT arrived. I think ChatGPT just emphasized something that was already there.
Yeah, but the let's say the old way of, let's say, vibing, maybe flowing. Let's call it flowing, because I think that's the correct actual terminology for that. You were at least in control of what you do, and I know many developers. I started that the way myself. So I think most start this way, right? It's like this. This is very you do a lot of exploration while doing that. There's a lot of playing with things, and But on some point, you need to grow into this engineering role instead of just being a coder. And I think that step is, let's say, you are always like a little bit on this verge of becoming that, because you are in charge of the code you create right now. You know everything. You know the flow of the code. The problem with vibe coding is the black box effects, is that you lose the understanding, and you believe and trust that the other one, which is the AI, produces correct code. And that is the big difference, I think. It is like the outcome is not like you have written it, which is a problem, because you don't know if it is correct enough to even fulfill your old needs, even though it's feature factory or not. You are not sure about that, right? And that is what we see. I think the sentiment in the feeds and on social media, where people say, like, as soon as they read just vibe coding, they block the person. I read that quite often. And I think that sentiment comes from this very special idea that people losing too much track of what they do when they vibe. But the reality is, I think people seem to stick to this trendy idea of, hey, there is this hype about vibing, and there's just vibing and not vibing. But that's not true. So vibing is an extreme, not vibing is, let's say, the classical way, maybe an extreme as well. So if we see that on a scale, and in between you have this agentic way of doing things. So that's basically an engineering practice enhanced with an agent in all three steps: planning, executing, reviewing. And that is, I think, what most people still miss, because I think most people have never used that in a production environment so far.
So I think, I think where vibe coding gets a bad rap is when it is being used to augment you outside of your primary field of profession. Right? So if I'm not a lawyer and you ask me a legal question, if I use ChatGPT to give you an answer, that's reckless, because I have no idea whether that's correct, right? But I can create the illusion that I'm competent. And I think this
chauffeur knowledge. Yeah.
Well, yeah, chauffeur knowledge. Yeah. I think that's a good metaphor for it. So it's, for example, I'm not very much at home at front-end engineering. So I won't use agentic coding for front-end work, because I have no idea to verify, like on the quality scale where it is. I can only verify it to my level, because I have no opinion, no beliefs. I know what you would do. I've seen you work, and I can sort of adapt to you, but I kind of need your presence to sort of keep me up to date, to keep you up to date on like the trends, because it's just not top of mind for me, right? I'm like, okay, I'm a polyglot. I can read it. I can reason. The general principles apply, but now give me the fashion, like give me flavor, give me preferences, culture, because I don't have an opinion. I'm happy to adapt to yours. And when I come to an AI, it doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
It needs mine. And if I don't have any, it'll produce crap. Right? So, like, it needs my opinion. It needs my style almost. And I'm hesitant to call it style because it goes deeper. Like, it needs some part of how I make decisions and how I think and how I structure my code. And we saw this with Paul Hammond's master prompt, for example, for his Cloud Code. Like, there's a lot of personality in that prompt, right? It's like, I like this, I don't like that. I want solid, I want dry, but I don't want you to go overboard. This is a violation. This is a good example. This is a bad example. This is something I would call out. So I'm documenting it. I'm expecting Cloud Code to behave. This is how I define, this is my house. This is how I define good behavior in my house and behavior that I would call out. Right? You need that. If I'm vibe coding for front end because I'm not a good front end engineer, I think that's reckless. Right? Because A, you have no idea to verify the output. B, the code reviewing time you invest prevents you from actually becoming an expert in front end.
Mm-hmm.
Which would have been the natural next step. It's super annoying. It's like, okay, I need to, I don't know, go to React.dev and start some example project and really hone down, okay, what is within my ability right now? What is just beyond my comfort zone? And just build it myself just to get experience with it, even if that is not economical right now.
Mm-hmm. My business partner and me, we both came from the full stack space of PHP back in the day. Mm-hmm. And we basically split it up into, he went into backend, Nest.js, TypeScript, these kind of things.
Yep.
I went into Next.js, React, TypeScript. And not only did the languages, but all the things around it. So MySpace is the browser, basically, right? All mechanics around the browser, PWAs, how to deploy.
Compatibility issues.
All those
APIs,
kind of things.
Yeah.
Talking to designers, talk way closer to the product people who talk mostly about the visual things. And he's more like the database, scalability issues, caching things, those kind of things, infrastructure. That is his realm. And lately, so I think before his holiday 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had the idea of, hey, maybe when you go on holiday, I can try some stuff you would provide me when I ask you for a feature. You know, we need to start with the API, something like that. I would try that myself. That was basically a closed experiment, which we did basically. I created something with, so I basically told Claude that it is allowed to take a look into the other folders as well. And it basically took a look and it understood everything. And I said, please extend this one. And when my business partner came back, he told me he was reverting everything and rewriting it. And I was thinking, oh, it was working, isn't it? And the point is, I was missing some parts and some ideas of how the system shall evolve. Right. So what was basically several developers already doing there, I was not getting. So that was my issue. So I was doing like, it was more like a thing you would do in a emergency scenario. You would fix something, but it is a temporary fix to a system, not a proper implementation. And we don't do that anymore. So we don't plan it even to become full stack again, just because we have AI, because it's still too complicated for us. Because we believe in agentic coding, so not in flow coding, not in vibe coding, but agentic coding. And for agentic coding, it is still about you and your knowledge. You just enhance it with something which can read and write faster than you can. Mm-hmm. That's the actual thing behind AI. It is not really thinking for you. It is never telling me, hey, we need to do as next this. It basically doesn't tell me that. I need to tell it the AI. And that's the point. Because you said that is a very good point.
What stands out to me? Where do we want to take this for the next 20 minutes?
Oh no, we are. That's OTJ. We don't know upfront.
I see we have in our subtitle. Is it actually useful? I think it might be valuable. to sort of discuss, well, when is it useful, or what conditions need to be in place for it to become useful. I think we've already touched on some of those. Let's look at the other extreme. Would it be useful for somebody to take the stance of, this is fresh technology, I don't trust it, no cloud code in my company? No,
I
cloud code
don't
in my
think
team.
I don't think so. It's because so if you have some regulations and you can't do that, that's one thing.
So, I mean,
but imagine you can.
Imagine it's okay. It's okay. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Let's
like just attitude towards risk level of, this looks like an experiment, I want to abstain. I want our team to abstain from this experiment.
In fact, there were several threads already on LinkedIn where I participated on this topic, and my conclusion was every time you should go for an experiment and be open-minded about that. The last thing you should do is treating like AI is something like the internet, which will be gone on some point in time, which was never the case. Same with calculators and those kind of things. So AI is here to stay. It is no joke. It is one of the biggest things going on right now. And it does have its issues, it does have its flaws, and it actually quite a lot of them. But the potential of it is so large that
but I keep hearing this word, potential. I'm not
Yeah.
interested in what will be there 2 years
But
from
that
now.
should be. That's my point.
I know this is not a philosophical debate. I am interested in that, of course. But for like the sake of the argument, I want to know, given what it can do right now, would it be net harmful to ban cloud code in a team?
No.
No, would it be harmful to ban it?
Yeah, sorry. That's of course, it would be harmful because you would deny the knowledge of, let's say, the result of the test of the hypothesis.
Okay.
So if it's now working for you or not,
So this is
will it be working for you in 1 year or not? Something
it's a
like
new
that.
frontier. It's a new skill that has to be trained. So there is value in getting in early so that we're proficient once the tools get better. Is that the argument?
Yes.
So the question right now is not, is it actually useful? Because I'm going to use it even if it's not useful. But more about, how is it useful? Like, what can I do to check? Like, which experiments would I be competent enough to verify? I think I would invite our audience and my coaching clients as well to entertain more that solution space of, where am I confident to ascertain usefulness? It's good at generating text. You've already mentioned it's very good at reading text very quickly. So it's very good for searching problems. Notion database, big Google Drive, I can search quite quickly. Especially for contextual search, where I can say, hey, find me documents where this was mentioned. And it's a little bit more abstract, like that idea of mention, rather than just exact keyword search, right? That's useful. But again, I think the value is in the question itself. The agentic coding, and to some degree the flow coding. Okay, we're back. The agentic coding and the flow coding, I think, have enabled a new breed of developer that is a little bit more curious regarding their tooling. Because I remember we had this curiosity as well with XUnit, with JUnit, with PHPUnit, with similar tools like a QUnit, for example. QUnit was terrible. Like, how do we make it? Like, what can I use this for? It's like, okay, testing. I hear everything about it. How can I use this? How can I derive value from this? Is that actually valuable? People are still up and about, is testing valuable? I find it difficult to have conversations with people who say Cloud Code is amazing, you should be using it all the time, that claim that testing is not valuable, that claim that writing tests is not valuable. Right? So like, it's the same people, right? So it's the same group of people. There are conflicts regarding how should we spend our time as engineers, let's say, right? So this craze with AI, I don't think is anything new. In fact, the behavior that it now amplifies has always been there. I'll just wing it. Or we have a procedure of testing in production, right? It's like tongue-in-cheek, a little bit more acceptance about the situation. But I can also come at it from like a very purist approach of, no, we've been doing TDD, extreme programming, we're ensembling anyway. No, Cloud Code is just going to be another member of our ensemble, right? I think that's a very mature, reasonable take here.
Yeah. And I would test it seriously as a team for a while. So let's say a time frame for, let's say, a month, and really saying we're working now with that primarily, and there is some form of end on code. So when we all see it's actually harming us, we can stop the experiment every time if we agree in a daily meeting or something like that. And but we continue from that, and we try at the end of the month to be more effective with AI than not. We genuinely try. But if we see we are not, and it's basically in the entire team the same thing, then you can still say let's go the old way, right? You can say that, but you would miss out if it's actually something which helps you to have less friction in the development. Like you can get things quicker done, you can understand them more, you have less cognitive load, you can focus more on high level things, and maybe even increase like other things because you are not so much focused on writing algorithms anymore. And that's something I would try to put as a hypothesis and test as a team in a genuine, true way, and not like being biased, not even opinionated, but biased and saying, I don't believe it. Let's try it 3 days. I don't believe it, because you will find reasons to not take it then. And you should be genuine about that, because it is the only person you harm, or only persons, is yourself when you would skip a tool which would actually help you. And you shouldn't be like the results of the first 3 days is not what it will be after 30 days, because you need to get used to how to use it, how juniors are involved in that one, how seniors are involved in that one, a total different story. Because a junior developer can't really say that, most juniors I personally know, I know in my career, is that they won't be able to really say, this is what I expect and that is the outcome, because there is still what I mentioned in the beginning, this exploratory thing, this learning aspect of it. So it is more like asking or using the AI to learn to understand the code base. How would I solve this right now? Talk with the results with an engineer, with a mentor or a senior or something like that. That is the way how juniors work with that. And the seniors are actually, I know exactly what I want. I know exactly what I have. So let's create a plan, execute it, review it, go ahead, right? That's my opinion. So give it the time frame.
What about the audio interface?
Can you repeat that?
The audio interface where it's microphone led.
I never used that. I don't know.
That was the original.
That was the original vibe coding idea.
Yeah.
But I personally don't like it. I don't see it in a fit for me personally, because I need to be able to pass paths, to pass references, to describe things like interfaces in text, because I wanted predefined things, coin things for the AI, so the AI isn't coining those. That is not really doable by Web2 speech interfaces, right?
There is also another trend about using multiple agents at the same time, where you're basically playing product manager and you're instructing multiple agents and then talking to one, and then it starts working. You talk to another, it starts working. I've never used it in that context.
I think that's bad
difficult
idea.
enough. I think it's difficult enough already.
Yes,
Okay,
I
people
think
that way.
you should be able. So you are very much the slow component in that process, which means that this is the reason why you have those agents. So you can process more complex patterns in your head than the AI, but you are pretty much slow because we only have a 12-watt brain, right? So that's one of those aspects. But so we use agents to amplify things we cannot do very well. But I don't think we should have multiple at the same time because it overloads us again. And if one agent is doing bad or something wrong, and you need to fix multiple wrong states while you're doing some positive states, that's not what a human can really do. I wouldn't try to do that. And when I take a look at GPT-5 now, when I use it with Juni GPT-5, it is so fast in the execution that I don't know what happened, but in the last 1.5 weeks, there were all those problems of the beginning of GPT-5 release are gone, and it's so fast, even way faster than Claude is, that I'm always like, oh, it's already done, and it's quite effectively done. And I think that
GPT-4 and Cloud Code were notoriously a little bit sluggish. Like the token generation was quite.
Claude is a real problem with token generation. So in Claude, the Claude is good for small tasks. So Claude, what most people use because of its agnostic, it's CLI tool. So you can use it basically in every environment. That's cool, but it is very bad. When you get to the token window, I never got to a token window in GPT-5 or something like that because my tasks are pretty much done before I get there. And when I do that in Claude Code, I have the tendency to always get to this $8 time token window, which kind of sucks, to be honest. It's first of all expensive, and not only expensive, but the overall costs of development become expensive because I know in that moment when it's close, when it says 80% of context is used for that session, I know that the quality drops immediately in that moment. Yeah. It simply starts to forget the things in the beginning, and when the content window hits, it's over. You can completely restart. I don't have that with Juni and GPT so far, so that's working way better. But I had 3 or 4 videos and lives I've done. Most of them were unsuccessful because I've tried new things during that sessions. That was never a good idea because I actually wanted to show something instead of sticking to my actual things, how I do. I was always like pushing things, like pushing out what can we do with Juni on day 3 after release, which wasn't a good idea because it was basically totally buggy, and I was even talking to the support and they helped me to fix that stuff. Today it's working very well, but it is important to understand that I think that we have a current state right now where we work with like Sonnet 4, like GPT-5. That is the current state. In 1 year, the idea of how fast and the token windows will vastly differ. So right now, the evolution of models is actually quite efficient, let's say, which means that the idea of having multiple agents becomes less interesting when we cannot control them anymore. Which means that if 2 models are as fast as GPT-5 with Juni right now is, I wouldn't be able to manage them because I can't plan as fast as the model is. So what I do while the model is working, I plan the next step already. So I'm there for this model. I can't feed another model. I am not capable of doing that with my 32 years of experience in coding. I can't. I simply cannot. So I don't believe in that idea right now. Maybe when vibe coding becomes something which is actually working in 10 or 20 years, right? Maybe from now, evolution and these kind of things, possible. But right now, a human can only control 1 agent effectively. That's my personal opinion. Yeah. What is working is the idea of Claude Code that you can spawn a review agent and you can spawn a coding agent because if you do 1 at a time, okay, specialized agents works, but simultaneously.
We had a comment about that in YouTube as well.
Comments.
Yeah, I had a comment saying, "Hey, many agents work at the same time for your code in Cloud Code in this context." There's tools there's different personalities of agents, different.
This is what I meant in the beginning, the last
prompt
comment.
groups.
Exactly so.
Different prompt groups where you can pre-prompt one agent to be focused on review. We can pre-prompt another agent to be focused on the work itself, the work plan. Maybe even have a third agent that's focused on work. I didn't try this yet. To me, this looks like La La Land. Like I'm trying to figure out what is the simplest augmentation to my workflow, not the most complex. Right? It's like with what I like about TDD is the simplicity of there's a lot of brain juice and it minimizes the needless keyword typing. And that's a good trade-off for me. Right? Like it takes a lot of brain power and it minimizes my needless debugging frenzy, moving around. It's just okay, done. Right? There's some thinking going on, and you keep going like down that. Such a path. But when the path is, there's like this agent going, and when I see the spinner show up, I go to the other agent, and I do Alt tab, and I start procrastinating. It's like, am I really benefiting from this? Or am I just creating the illusion that? But I don't want to be too skeptical about it, right? I understand it. My personal stance is still I use AI tools a lot for everything except writing code, right? So I write into the code base, don't get me wrong, but the implementation for the most part still goes through my hands when I am coding or when I am coaching. I use a lot of AI tools for everything else, coming up with the plan, coming up with the refining the plan, restructuring the plan. What I like doing is, hey, we scribbled something here on Excalidraw, toss it into ChatGPT, convert this to Mermaid for me, and commit it to my code base. Like that's amazing. It's like digitalizing some scribbling notes, and then you have the mermaid diagram, and you fix it slightly to erase the typos, and you're like, okay, we talked about this. We're gonna do this event modeled TDD fashion. Give me the type definitions for the events and the commands, please, for TypeScript, and it's done.
I think
I enjoy doing that manually. I enjoy doing that. It doesn't take a long time, but it does save me those 10 minutes. So is it worth it? Maybe. Is it reducing my level of stress and anxiety? Yes. Does it require active thought about, hey, when am I going to empower it to do something? I think yes. I think that also requires some level of training, some level of thought, some level of intention, direction. Right? But I'm always hesitant to, okay, if I'm coding, it's going to be agentic, and I'm going to use my main prompt for it. But then I need to be all in. I need to be not distracted with anything else, because I need to be coding and reviewing at the same time. And I'm constantly on the lookout for hallucinations. And just from personal experience, this sort of constant vigilant state of I'm looking for hallucinations, I find it very draining. So
we had that topic quite often, that in my opinion, I don't see hallucinations anymore. What I see is gaps. So it's not like
can you describe the difference? Like what's a hallucination?
So the hallucination is the idea that the AI generates things which is simply wrong, was asked for, making things up, something like that. But when it comes to coding, so that happens in ChatGPT quite often, of course. But it doesn't really happen in coding models. So in coding models, I see gaps, and by a gap I mean I think that, hey, it was just this morning. So there was a button for an AI function in a wizard for a tenant system, and I basically said that, hey, this button is invisible, right? So let's find out the issue, and it basically replied to me that no, it is correctly implemented. The button is visible, and I saw the button is invisible. So I took a look myself. I needed to break down myself because I saw that was basically a gap, which means that the AI isn't capable of understanding the actual context 100%, and you as a human can. And I simply saw that there was a logical error. I wasn't prompting or planning in the beginning. So I found it out in that moment that I have missed something in the beginning of the planning session. So that is a gap. And so you cannot expect, or sometimes it's working, sometimes the AI does find a way around it, but sometimes it's not possible. So it basically thinks, hey, what I'm seeing is correct. It is more like a gap in knowledge that this isn't correct, and you have this knowledge, but you have never passed it to your colleague. The same happens or would happen with humans. If you wouldn't tell a human a specific aspect, and you would just expect that this person knows this aspect, but don't. That's a gap. That is what I see on a very regular basis, and I worked on those kind of gaps basically the hardest. I made sure that after each step, I tell the AI to basically document back the issues we had in the session into the context file. So we have multiple files. And that helps a lot to prevent next time the same issue from happening again. So it's a little bit like proactive way of fixing future problems. So that is where I can say that that helps a lot to generate some quality, and that helps the team as well, because when you do that, those context files are shared amongst the team. So even if a person is using those context files and wasn't aware that this gap issue happened several times, the chance is high that it won't happen because you have documented that this is actually an issue and needs to be addressed next time up front. That's what basically Paul Hammond was doing in his Cloud Code as well, in his MD, in his Cloud MD, to prevent things happening.
Even recalling our conversation with Paul, even Paul said that he was not happy with, like, yes, we are, we are propping up Paul's example of Paul made it work. But Paul is not using it in production at work. Paul is using it solo in his free time on his pet project that he is hoping to commercialize. So, and I'm focusing on the positive here. This isn't like I'm not aiming to be judgy. I'm aiming to understand what makes Paul hesitant. Paul has a very good prompt. It's an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
What? I mean, it's not fair, but it's not a question to you, but it's like, what is in my mind when I think about our conversation with Paul Hammond, is why didn't Paul go all in for this at work, at his
because
work?
It's not allowed. I know that.
I know it's not allowed, but like, if
You
it's
would like
not
to.
allowed, why didn't he pursue it? As in, what is
Because
allowed? Which AI is allowed? Like, where are the boundaries?
they use another agent, but not Cloud Code in the way as he is trying to bring that to a stage where he thinks it's a professional version.
And what he was working on only made sense in Cloud Code. Like, that was my context. My context was that the way that he's working is only really viable in Cloud Code. So it's not that we have, you and I are talking about these things as if they are universally, that it's just about token cost, that they are pretty much the same product. But it's not. That there's something about Cloud Code that makes Cloud Code, the tool, much more appealing to a software engineer than than Cursor, than Copilot, than Junie. And I would say that for IntelliJ users, Junie seems to be the closest thing to Cloud Code.
Yeah, but it is because of GPT-5. Because if you use other models in Junie, you suddenly see that it is not working as intended anymore. So that's my personal experience as well, of course. But I used Cloud Code so much. Let's say a lot. Let's say I used it a lot.
You do use it a lot. So
I use it a lot.
Compared
So and
Yeah,
everything
usually.
I've tried differently, like GitHub Agent, Junie in the beginning, Cursor CLI as Cursor CLI with GPT-5. Everything wasn't working except Cloud Code
Yeah.
until GPT-5 came out.
And then
And
Junie was also viable.
Exactly. Those. So in the very beginning, it was a little bit like bumpy road GPT-5 release, but now it's stable. It's okay, and it's even outperforms, especially in understanding, let's say, requirements translating into tests is better even on GPT-5. Cloud Code is better in really staying on a topic, on a focus,
But is it
but
better
not for
at
long.
it than
Those
you
kind-
are?
What's it?
Translating requirements into tests. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, and it's not better than a human. It is way worse.
So what's the trade-off? Like, I can imagine it can translate 1,000 requirements into 5,000 tests very quickly, but you might not be happy with all of them. So the cost-benefit analysis there is, yes, it can do it very quickly if in advance I know that I will be happy with the level of quality. Like that's like, I'm not gonna ask it to do it if the result is I'm probably gonna be unhappy and I will need to review all 5,000. Right? So
what I changed to address that, because in reality, you saw that even on stream when I was trying in the first GPT-5 version of Junie to say, please implement those 3 test cases, and I got 6 or 7 or something like that, which I never asked for. There were some functionality tests which I never asked for. Those kind of things I would create myself better. What I changed in the recent weeks was to really go way more into behavior driven, which means that instead of going really, I have this one, let's say we have a modal with 3 components in it for settings. Yeah. Those, and before that, I was testing each of them, basically their core behaviors, but separately from each other. And I started to change that a little bit and saying my test basically spans over this modal, because that's how we can actually work with that. And I expect that the behavior of the modal is like that, and we cover that. So as long as this actually works a lot better with agents to really say, I expect the behavior to be that, and you need to verify the behavior. If you keep talking about the behavior of a overarching context, the AI seems to understand it better than to try to narrow it down, because the more you narrow it down, the more it tries to create functional tests, which I don't want. I don't need functional tests, right?
You don't, functional test being
implementation tests. You implement something to verify an implementation. That is not
narrowed implementation tests.
This is we use it on some points, like very core components like buttons or text fields. We have of course function tests there, but especially when we compose, then we want to have behavior tests, because we don't test if a button fires or not, because it's already tested in the unit test of the button. So and that's the point, because if you don't say that, the AI will then go and think, oh, I need to check if the button is working, because it doesn't have to. It's a gap again. It doesn't have the context. Oh, it's already covered. So you need to explicitly say there's a modal. We have those 3 things. The first test case of the entire test is for the first, the second, the third, and then you make an overarching negative test about those behavior steps. So if we behave wrong, if we behave right, if there is a wrong behavior coming from the server, that is the scenarios which then translate into good tests. That's something how I never tested it with Cloud Code, to be honest. I only tested that with GPT-5.
Is to convert.
Convert what?
Convert text.
Ah.
We usually talk about text generation. And what I like to experiment with is conversion. For example, I do this for I don't know, my clients, for example, like one-off tasks where I have a conversation and the initial few conversations with the decision maker, AI is creating proposals. The first draft of the proposal is my template. Like it's handcrafted.
Mhm.
But then the follow-up drafts are, hey, we made some changes. Here's the transcript from our Zoom call. Highlight the sections that are no longer relevant that we need to change, and give me a draft of the changes. Right, so it converts a proposal to a proposal plus transcripts equals new proposal. But there are still some equivalent steps in the structure of the document. That's, let's say, a more boring example for a non-software engineering use case. But I can also do this with tests. Right? So I can start and say, here's chai format of tests.
Mhm.
Is it chai?
I like
Yes. So
chai
it's-
drinks.
So chai is the jest format of tests, right? So here's
Mhm.
chai format of tests. These tests are like my preliminary brain dump of this feature we're building. We can't build everything at the same time. We want to start from the simplest features that are highly valuable and then go into more complex cases. This is how we define the valuable things. This is where we see the most complexity. Here's my tests. Just sort them and restructure them in order of complexity. Because I'm giving it an unordered brain dump,
Mhm.
and I'm giving it a document that sort of explains my priorities, and I ask it to prioritize it. And this works also very well for sprint planning or equivalent activities of, here's the people I have, here's what the people know, here's what you want to do, and give me a suggestion.
That is actually what I use. So we are still about to release PageMap, but one of the aspects we have in there is we use basically AI tools to enhance the experience of the app itself.
Mhm.
And when you use, what we do is we use AI to actually create AI prompts, because creating AI prompts is such an extensive task. It is like writing a book, actually. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit like that. There's so much information in so many files you need to create and keep up to date, continuously updating, that the only viable solution in that software development space is to actually tell the AI what the files should represent. What
Yeah.
are your priorities in those files? You
Yeah.
can't really do that as a human in time. This is where really the AI outperforms any human, even teams of humans. Just a single AI in some minutes. That's interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I found very surprising was that the AI is very good at situational analysis of, here's my invoices and here's my calendar for the past 5 weeks. Please find discrepancies, and it just finds it, and it's very useful to do these kinds of tasks. Yes, it will have some errors, but it's much faster. There is no equivalent to a human being. And the problem is, you touched on something important. The problem is prompt writing is also text writing. So as far as writing code is not the bottleneck to begin with. There are a bunch of other things that are time consuming in addition to writing code.
Mhm.
So if writing code is a small part of the work, if the code requires prompting, there is a cost benefit analysis to be made of, is you writing the prompt more valuable than you writing the code? I often find myself in this dilemma in projects that lack a strong master prompt.
My business partner is saying that as well. So he's working in the backend area where you have multiple systems, multiple services, multiple things. And when you need to define that, you can just put it in, because it's basically a big definition, most changes you do.
Yeah.
And so he's using way less generative AI than I do. And in the front end, you have this boilerplate everywhere, where AI really makes sense, because you simply save time, because the code commits of front end is so much larger than in the backend area. And at least in our stack setup.
One of the things this has resulted in is that, when I have a non-working meeting, with a group of software engineers, I focus on it being purely coaching, like improving how we communicate, improving how we work together, improving, like figuring out like what human bottleneck are we missing? What's the obstacle here? What do you need help with? Because if we have a conversation about code, about tests, about architecture, I'm like, stop. Let's open up a Miro board or a Notion or your IDE and let's write it down, or Excalibur. Right? So I'm much more conscious of us having a digital, or just, turning on the transcript for the meeting. So I have a document, because I find it very valuable to just dump these documents into ChatGPT or Cloud Code and say, we created an event model ad hoc for like this small feature. Give me the boilerplate, and I have a prompt for the boilerplate. It's like identify the events, make sure they are in past tense, identify the commands, make sure there's no gaps, meaning it's information complete we can get from the beginning of the system to the end of the system without issues. I will handle the closing of the books. I will handle the stream organization. Just give me the boilerplate so I can start working on this. So we can commit a initial draft into it with a feature flag that will go out as like a prototype for a test scenario, right? So it's more in this sense of, if we have a working meeting and we're discussing the next increment of delivery, I want it to have like a digital footprint of some kind. Even if we're just talking, I am still recording that transcript, because I know that I will find value in just dumping that transcript into ChatGPT and asking, hey, I'm about to code here. Like, even if it's just blanket, like just summarize it for me and just give me anything that you might think is of value for me for the task of coding. And sometimes it will pick up, like make some class suggestions, and it's completely random. I just allow myself to be positively surprised. Plus, it's very good at picking up action points. Right, so
I would like to add something in general to the idea of agentic coding, which comes to my mind right now. So there is this still both agentic, right, not vibing, but there is this stepwise approach where I always fall back to, which is the one which is definitely working. But as we already saw that in some areas, it's especially when it comes to code gen, it is not even worth using it, or in some areas it is. And then there is this idea of, hey, this is what I tried in my videos as well, in the streams, is to say I outline an entire issue and try to stay below the context window and try to get it in one go by planning it extremely well. In most cases, when I was using it, I was in a way or another successful with it, but it is not it was basically never 100%, which means that you usually, when you plan well, you get somewhere to 80% or between 80 and 90%, and you need to basically follow prompt or fix yourself the last bit. And that is what I still use quite often, because I want to push boundaries a little bit with AI. I want to take a look what happens. I'm very aware that this practice is only possible because I know what I'm expecting, and I'm happy to revert when it's not what I want to have and when it's actually harmful. So I don't have problems with that. This is the reason I use it. And I want to mention that because we haven't talked about those specific points, because there are people using that in this way or on the other. So you mentioned in the very beginning the TDD persons who have an easy play with agentic coding. That is a stepwise approach, actually. So they go test by test. Some go for multiple tests, but this is always the stepwise approach. Very, very small batches at a time. And you could do that in separate windows. It would work. But the approach I'm just saying now is, especially when you build up, let's say, the new trunk of the foundation of your application in the very beginning, when you have a lot to generate, actually, that is something which is interesting, but I haven't found 100% a valid way to really do that as a team right now, because it is way more into the direction of gambling, as you mentioned in the beginning, than the stepwise approaches, because you always aim to hit. It's like playing mini golf. You always try to aim to get as close as possible to the hole, but it's not like you definitely hit it. It is sometimes, but rarely.
Like with linear regression, there's this alpha component where you have like a polynomial function, and you just want to get to like a minimum point that you understand to be a global minimum, and it's like basically trying to land a ball in a hill, like at the bottom of the valley, and you need to define a step. The problem is that how this was described to me is that if the bottom is here and there's like this, it's like, look at like the shape of my face, my beard, right? So we're going from here to here. The problem is if the step is small enough, it can go down, 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 and it will oscillate and it will stay there. If the step is too large, it will go from here to here, then it'll overcorrect and it can diverge, right? So in linear, so this is very basic machine learning. It's just linear algebra, really. Linear regression is this idea that we need to maintain certain conditions to make sure that the algorithm itself converges towards an answer rather than diverging, right? So if the step is too small, it's like forever, and we might actually not get anywhere due to rounding errors. And if the step is too large, we might diverge from the answer. And I feel like, and this is an oversimplification. It's not fair, with generative, like very complex generative models, way unfair comparison. But it feels like that's where we get to when we get to this idea of the token space is almost exhausted. It's kind of starting to have like very large gaps. And the more I'm trying to correct it, the more it just goes into the opposite direction. And it's not helpful in any way to continue the conversation. And it's very hard to stop.
Yes.
It's very hard to say, I think this conversation from now on is unproductive. And I need to stop. Because
sunken cost fallacy. We have invested time.
Yes, because it is very difficult. Okay, so if I stop here, what do I revert to? Because I was not happy with what I was. Like, because this is the main problem TDD is solving, right? So we commit every time we're happy with the result, which is, I think, why TDD is so useful in using in the agentic, in the flow sense of usage, right? And again, I'm being very specific about Claude Code here. I'm not 100% of being able to certainly agree that the GPT-5, the natural interface that you can get to this level, but specifically with Claude Code, TDD works very well because you kind of had this checkpoint of, I was happy with this step, so I made a commit. And I made the commit. Like, it didn't do a commit that then I had to review and then do another commit to fix it, but I made a commit that I am definitely happy with of it being in the code base. And then if we like derail, I know what my revert point is. And I know that I am happy with my revert point, even if I have to start again. And
that's
I see this
important.
like, and that's important because you need to, it's like having a backup and you having the confidence that, yes, if I need the backup, the restore will work. Like it won't like crap out on me or
it's like climbing a mountain. So if your last save point is like a meter below you, it's okay. If it's 10 meters below, it's maybe an issue, right?
You're hesitant to use it. Yeah, you're hesitant to use it. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe you don't die, but it's not really healthy.
But you'll still be injured. Yes,
yeah.
Like you won't die, but you'll still be injured, right? So, but also if you make too many checkpoints, it'll also constrain your freedom of movement. So you also have to plan more about where again. Okay, I'm not a mountain climber.
But that was what I was going to. So we have this strict stepwise, and this can we do multiple steps in one go?
In one
and
go.
This is where most of my personal hypothesis. I put up every day several and try to sometimes they work, sometimes not. It's an ongoing experiment actually, but I believe that the future is definitely going into the one where we try to do multiple things in one go. That's what I think.
What I'm worried about is that if I look back at ChatGPT the last 12 months, let's say ChatGPT August 2024 till August 2025, most of the prompts that I have written last year are useless.
In which sense useless?
They're just not relevant anymore. They don't produce high quality results anymore.
So you wouldn't prompt like this, or you wouldn't use this prompt anymore?
Both.
But I think
so my point is, I'm leaning towards write down your prompts, help, what I'm trying to say is that the lifetime of the prompt is much shorter than the lifetime of the code. So
yes, this is the reason why those prompt managers don't really work.
Yes, that's what I'm
prompt management tools are nonsense.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So the similar to how, because evergreen prompts would create this illusion that, in at least in software, that waterfall makes sense, because Cloud Code and GPTs are uncertain tools. Like, they come with a lot of uncertainty. They come with a lot of unknowns. They come with a lot of quirky behavior, and that means that our prompts will constantly be adapted, and the thing we're using the most will be the one that's being adapted the most. But that also means that the value is derived primarily in my ability to expertly reason about the prompt and refine it and integrate with the tool or the MCP or Cloud Code. Like, that skill is what makes the experience good, not the prompt itself, not the model itself. Yes, you can use a bad model, but I would attribute that to, let's say, lack of competence or confidence on the operator, on the engineer, to pick the right one. If the right one even exists. A year ago, the right prompt didn't really exist for a lot of things that we talk about. But that brings me to this idea that I've been saving my prompts, and I've not been using very old prompts anymore. Like 2 years ago, I had this ChatGPT of take a deep breath and please do this. And
I don't store prompts that long, to be honest. I store them maybe a day or two or something like that, then I delete it.
But I'm coming at it from this perspective of, I am now committing prompts into my code base. And I'm thinking that maybe they should have some form of self-destruct of, like, if you don't change the prompt, like in 6 months, it should be erased and recreated using the latest model or something. It might just be a temporary thing for rate of change on like the model improvements. It's very hard for me.
Do you mean master prompt? Do you mean the specific?
Prompt, yeah, the master prompt.
Okay.
The master prompt.
Okay.
Because what I'm seeing,
okay.
I'm seeing is that people are just using, like, the master prompt is like this, like a big project that nobody likes doing. They create it, and then you diverge in intent more and more and more and more. And I'm thinking that maybe, will we be able to create a master prompt that is evergreen? That's what I'm curious about.
The master prompts and the context files we have are the most changing files.
Yes, right. So then I need to ask myself, the more complex these prompts are becoming, is the value, like, how long-term is the value of writing the prompt files? Could I just be coding by hand instead and just save myself the hassle of the prompt files?
In front end, definitely not, just because of the sheer amount of stuff you need to write. In backend, I can't really speak about it because I'm not doing that. I know that people start to try to use AI in infrastructure, like infrastructure as code as well. I don't see the value there at all. To use generative AI. The reason for that is you define something, and the definition is already what you pass anyway to whatever system you apply
it's
to.
so close to money that you will review it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's like infrastructure stuff is so close to the credit card that you will review it no matter what, and I don't think it provides.
But you know, it's like when I define something for a prompt for coding,
and
I define something for infrastructure as code, I have it defined. I don't need to let the AI write it again. So it is.
I know a use case. You know, for example, when Kubernetes, not Kubernetes, Docker files a few years ago had this V2 to V3 shift in like the Docker file format.
Yeah, rewriting things.
Yeah, and so I found it useful to this idea of, hey, I have a Docker file in V2.
Mm-hmm.
Convert it to V3, please, and make sure it has a correctly cached build stage. Which is like a very typical Kubernetes thing to do with your Docker files.
Okay, I agree. Within Docker files, which is part of infrastructure as code as well, it is viable.
Yeah, for like that narrow task. Again, how often do you do this task? Probably like once a year.
But like, let's say all kind of YAML files, Helm charts, those kind of things, I wouldn't use AI. Maybe for writing Terraform scripts, maybe. But we don't use Terraform anymore. It's basically useless for most startups and small businesses these days because they're
don't get me Terraform rage bait right now. Like 1 hour and a half into the episode.
It is not worth it. It's not worthwhile, right? And we can do it one day actually. And so AI does have spaces where it helps a lot.
Look, I grew up on Docker Swarm.
Me too. It's great.
So
I still love it.
Like you can't. I mean, right? I mean, it's a hassle to have, you know, to have that idea of, okay, is it declarative? Is it alive? Is it imperative? You know, going from I'm doing disaster recovery on a blue-green setup. What do I run the swarm on a config and then I change the config and then I run it again and then so there is that yucky, like it like lacks operational imperative commands. I think that's the whole point of Kubernetes.
Well, you have tools like Portainer which helps you there, but it's not like not the level of Kubernetes.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. But again, different topic. What I would like to maybe close on is I think we can all agree that AI tools will be here to stay and that there is definitely a muscle to build here.
Yes.
I think it's not going to be a dominant pillar. I don't think it's going to be huge in my lifetime. Happy to be wrong. But I don't think AI will significantly shift productivity in the next 10 years. It might be very pervasive. It might be everywhere, and everywhere it might shift productivity noticeably a little bit, consistently. That I think will happen. But like not, companies on 3 or 6 months go-to-market cycles. They won't go to 2-day go-to-market cycles on novel, new frontier products. That's my hunch. Again, there's no value in me speculating about this, but I think we're gonna agree that just understanding not even how GPTs work, but how to interface with Cloud Code, I think that's very valuable. Mm-hmm. Cloud Code is turning out to be a very universally applicable CLI tool for any engineer, even if you're not using it for writing code.
It's a little bit expensive, That's one of those issues. If you use it like for everything in an agentic way, it becomes on larger front end code bases quite expensive. That's one of the issues. So when you so because people try to compare that to wages and salaries, I wouldn't do that because it's more like an extension of a person and not really like substitution. That's one of the things. In Julie, I made 500 contributions to the front end, and that was pretty costly. It was $600, something like that. And so many startups wouldn't, especially bootstrap ones, wouldn't be able to run that amount of
on
money
massive scale because it will just be
with
thousands
3 to
of
4
thousands.
people. Exactly. So if everyone would use it like that,
Yeah.
it would simply be too expensive.
Especially
Junie's way.
startups.
Yeah,
So for
go ahead.
especially startups, for those that don't know, startups like to like squeeze out their runway as long as possible because it gives them that big sense of certainty. And if you now have a tool that can sort of like non-deterministically squeeze from your budget, like drain from your budget, I think that's just currently not very plausible, let's say, in the current market.
As
There's-
far as I can see, Junie is way less expensive with GPT-5
Yeah.
than Claude. It is like we with our code base, we need to use the API pay-as-you-go usage, so we can't even use $200 max. It's not enough for us. So we basically still are on the original API version.
And you're a small team.
Yeah.
You're a relatively small team on a large code base.
Yeah, but we have a complex
Imagine
product,
enterprises
so
now, right? So
yeah, that's a whole different story then. And
Yeah.
the reason is Sonnet 4 is so expensive, while GPT-5 is surprisingly cheap. So that's even 4.0 is more expensive than GPT-5 is. So that is one of the biggest
for API usage.
in both cases. So basically LLM usage. So if you just go to OpenAI and go for the cost factors, that's cool. So I really like that one, and so that changes quite a lot there. But it's still like how can I put it? So I want to quickly rewind a little bit. You said that you don't think that AI is providing a productivity boost.
I didn't say that. I
Okay.
don't think it will have a massive productivity boost in our lifetime,
Mhm.
but I do think it will have a consistent small productivity boost, a little bit everywhere. My opinion is that it will definitely be around for a non-trivial gain. But I'm very skeptical about, hey, all in. Very skeptical.
I never believed in 10x anyway, and I don't believe that AI is creating 10x devs. I said that already on stream several times. I having something in mind for front-end development in my space. This is where I can talk with, and I'm pretty much like saying that 30%. That's what I see. So when I did a lot of comparings, these kind of things, and I always get to this. It's 30% more effective, 30% less, let's say, exhausting when it comes to your brain capacity. You're not draining that fast, and you can even do something when you are not on 100%, like in the evening hours. This is interesting for me personally as an entrepreneur, and there is where I see AI is actually helping. I don't have personal experience in large enterprises as a developer. We just work with those companies, but I'm not a developer there myself. I never was actually. So I can't really say when you see that, they're working 3 days on design documents before they start to implement a feature. In a startup, on a small business company, you don't have that. So it's a little bit like...
I see that in startups too. That's not entirely accurate. I think startups
Never
in
saw that.
Europe, I think startups, so I'm not... I'm sorry, I'm not aiming to diminish your experience. What I'm saying is that I have seen this from my experience, is that startups that I have worked with in on. They have this sort of over planning before engineering bias, where there's like a lot of
Mhm.
planning, discussion, more planning, discussion, prototype, roadmap, and then engineering, and then it's scoping, and then it's refinement, and then I see this a lot. Like, I've worked with quite a few teams now
Mhm.
that wanted my help. Nobody was extremely lean on this. Might be bias, right? I mean, I'm there because that's their problem. That's part of their problem. But from a perspective of that sense of this seems to be normal in a lot of startups, it seemed to be the case that you don't go from business owner making a product decision to implementation in 24 hours. I only see that in extremely high performing teams, extremely high performing, like ruthless product engineering.
I don't
team.
need 24 hours for that.
I know, but you're the exception. My point is you're the exception.
I come from
You
jogging
work like-
outside and then let's go implementing the
Yes,
idea, right?
but you're the exception. Like what I'm saying is that the way you work, I don't think it translates very well to like the vast majority of.
No, it doesn't. This is the reason why I implemented very often the average developer idea,
Yeah.
where this doesn't
Because
apply anymore. So
Because if you look at it, this is how N26 works, their product org. This is how OpenAI works. You know, they are Amazon to some degree. They're obsessed with this idea of why can't we have it today? Not
Mhm.
what is the estimate. I don't care what the estimate is. Why can't we have it today?
yeah, this is ownership-driven thing. So
Yes,
the
yes.
closer you put the engineer to the product, or
Yes.
even replace the product with the engineer,
Yes,
but
yes.
you can only do that with very, let's say, that is you need to combine a lot of skills and attitude there at the same time. It is rare. To my experience is most teams are average, and that's okay. And that's the reason why I implemented the average developer approach. So keep things simple. You grow slower, but more reliable. So
And
the
the
problem
more-
with
And my bias here would be my judgment to some degree would be that the more the team is average, the more it's sensitive to being led like a feature factory, where there is this sort of upfront documentation stage, this upfront hyper individuation, there's this upfront like waste being generated that is not actionable, like discussion points that are not actionable. Those create the illusion that they are so inefficient that using a tool like Cloud Code would be a significant boost to their productivity, just because their baseline is so low. Right? Now, I wouldn't act on that being an attribution for the general success of AI. I would attribute that to most companies would benefit from just being more lean, being more extreme programming focused.
What do you mean by that? Of course, I know what XP and Lean is, but in the context of our conversation now, would you like to be more in the 24-hour scheme, or would you like to be more in the plan everything with design documents for weeks before we implement? And you need to have those reviews next week with other teams and blah, blah, blah.
That's a very good question. It's a very good question. For example, how we're doing it now, with one of my teams, I'm doing this right now, coaching their leaders and staff engineers. And in 4 weeks, in 3.5 weeks, we came down to this idea of, what I'm analyzing is, okay, they're planning a sprint. Cool. Does it work? Okay. No. Let's plan it differently. Does that work? No. Okay. Let's do another experiment. Does that work? No. Okay. And organically, with my presence or with my influence, I'm not quite sure, but I kept asking questions of, why are we doing this? Is this helping? Why don't we not do this? Right? So and we came down to this idea of, now this week we have defined priorities, like how many are there? Okay, 3. Okay, we need 3 value streams, 3 teams. Okay, let's split up. It's like, let's split up early, let's maintain teams, and then let's not talk to each other, let's not disrupt each other for at least a few days until progress is made, and then let's get together if needed. And let's disband and reform the team if needed if there's an emergency. And that is what I'm talking about, is that, oh, if your plan doesn't work for 2 weeks, okay, shorten it down to 1 week. Doesn't work for 1 week, okay, shorten it down to 3 days. You ask me, should it be 24 hours? I don't know. Like, I think the number should depend on like what the heck is going on. If you give me a 1 week plan and you're good day 4, I have no need to intervene. But if you give me a 2 week plan and you derail from the plan 2 days in, and I see no changes in planning, and there was a like huge sunk cost investment into planning those 2 weeks, I'm like, no, this is a problem. Let's stop, right? Because we have created the illusion that we are going to deliver that. Like, we have created a lot of expectation, which means that the sooner we derail from the plan, the more negative emotion we're sort of piling up. It's like, that's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. That's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. That's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. And now everybody is demotivated going in, right? It's like, let's stop this. Like, this is needless pressure. This is pressure that does not result in productivity. This is pressure that results in a blocking of improvement. So what can we improve? So I think when I say lean and agile, what I really mean is fail fast. Is how tight is your feedback loop? And can it be tighter? Can it be tighter? For example, today, one of the discussions that I had was related to this idea of, we're not doing chunk-based development right now. Okay, let's do it tomorrow. I said, jokingly, it's like, okay, let's do it tomorrow. No more branches tomorrow. Right? So why can't we have that? Right? To get to the point with that level of attitude of, okay, that's a problem. Okay, do we agree? Does everybody have this problem? Like, do we agree that everybody have this problem? Is this like your thing and you have a thing and you have a thing? Does everybody have their like own beliefs and reservations for why they think they can't? And is this a batch size issue? Is this a testing issue? Do they think? Is this an imposter syndrome issue? So it all comes down to these little details. And then ultimately we agree, yeah, but we can use feature flags. And then I asked, okay, let's game that out. Let's do a game let's create a simulated scenario right now. You create a feature, how do you use it? How do you do feature flags? Okay, what does it help with? Did it make the feedback loop tighter? Okay, it went out to production. Did it help? No, because it's turned off. Okay, when are we turning it on? We are turning it on when we're watching. Okay, when we're watching, we turn it on. Is the customer affected if it's broken? Yes. So what did it help with? Right? Because if we don't do this analysis, the team will just use, I can say feature branches banned tomorrow, and they can do feature branches with feature flags, right? Right? Because I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen on the adoption path. And they can't see that as a symptom, because they believe that feature branches are good in protecting production from the thing they created, right? So the thing is unrefined and dangerous. So why are we creating the thing in an unrefined and dangerous manner? Right? So
the interesting, funny part is they bring it even to the point that they want to have preview environments, a very complex infrastructure scenario,
and then they can test it, turning off the feature turning the feature flag off, turning it on, testing it, changing the user, turning it off, turning it on, and then you basically just have branches with feature flags, right? But not to be judgy on them. This was a legitimate concern that they brought to the table, and they thought the solution would solve the problem, but because there was like no real connection with reality to verify whether it's actually useful, nobody really had the excitement or the confidence to actually put it into action. That's what I'm talking about when I say, you asked me, should we be on this 24-hour cycle? I'm thinking, if the feedback loop is 72 hours, 3 days, it's Monday, Wednesday we'll have like a discussion. Why does it have to be 3 days? Right? So why aren't we deploying on demand?
That would be my focus, and I got that from Brian Finster, like that mentality of on demand. Everything is deployable. If it's a small commit, it can be deployed in 10 minutes. If it's a slightly larger thing, it can be deployed in tomorrow, right? So it's a coming at it from that perspective of why can't it be simpler? Why can't it be smaller? And I fear that a lot of product organizations, they're like, yeah, let's try to make it smaller so that we can have more certainty. And then they immediately use that certainty on like increasing scope. Right. So there is that sort of push-pull going on. And I feel like this good cop, bad cop mentality is very difficult to balance in a single person, in a startup especially. Especially if your product owner is non-technical, or if all of your engineers don't have like business experience or product experience. So
but what I see the issue with that people don't use trunk-based development and don't try to really follow the idea of continuous delivery is very often in teams where you don't have a lot of experience. So I think that so either you have not a lot of experience because you work mainly with newer developers, like 1 to 2 years or maybe 3 of experience, or you have a large chain of command and low ownership for the developers themselves.
I think that's it.
But it's most often a scenario where you have less experienced engineers because they don't want to be treated like that. That is what I see as well. So there's a tendency. It's not the 100% absolute, but it's a tendency. So when you have teams where a lot of different ways. So you mentioned Brian Finster. All the people talking about continuous delivery, TDD, those kind of XP things, right? Those people are most of the time very experienced. So we're talking about 10, 15, 20 years or more of experience. So it's like definitely senior level. So it's not like a doubt is the senior or not, right? It is not like, is it 5 years of experience? Is it actually? No, there's no doubt about that. And those teams often prefer in saying, no, we need to avoid, let's say, feature flags. We need to avoid feature branches. We need to avoid everything which delays things because that doesn't fit into our natural flow. And to be able to have a natural flow, you need to understand your craft. That's the baseline. So you can't have like, hey, let's be like brave and have a lot of tests, but when the average developer isn't able to implement those tests and be confident, the flow is broken. And I think that's one of the issues we have here. That we often have teams where you have maybe one senior, and I see this in many companies we work with. There's just one senior, and this senior is sometimes just part-time. And then you have other seniors, which aren't seniors, are just people with 4 or 5 years of experience. They are quite good in what they do, personally just intermediate developers, but they call themselves seniors because I don't know why. Some idea behind that. I see it differently. I have a very specific opinion when I talk to a person to say that is a senior or not. It's simply like that. And I think that when teams really want to improve these kind of things, they need to make sure that the actual experience level is higher, that you have at least one senior continuously mentoring everyone else instead of having hands on them, him or herself. That would be one good step into the direction of becoming someone who can practice continuous delivery. And you said that, hey, I'm an exception. So me and my business partners, we are long in the game, very long together already. I'm very long in the game already. So when I take a task, even if it's a hard thing, we always get it done until next day. Everything we do basically in a single task, and we always deploy. We don't have a problem with that. We always execute on what we do. But as soon as we get people together.
What makes you unique, though, is that you're flat. Your organization
this is what I wanted to say. When we were 6 people in the agency part, it stopped working that way. because that wasn't translating very well to people who were basically junior
Less
or
experienced.
intermediate, because they needed more time to actually revalidate and understand. Somehow you needed to have more reviews. The more experienced you are, the less reviews you need to have. Jonathan isn't reviewing my code all day long. We don't have the time for that. So we have structured our work so we can be
There's no
extremely
benefit.
effective. There is no benefit anymore. So we have done that so often that we know each other by just when he's pushing changes, I know how they look like because I know what he told me he would change. So that is so extremely predictive.
I had a few developers, like buddies, coworkers in my career with whom I had this relationship. Like we could be very, like, typical, very much high chemistry, extreme programming pair. Like somebody that I could just sit down on. It's like, hey, what are you working on? Let me help. And we would just immediately click, and he would explain context, and we would just jump in. And this is rare. And you and Jonathan seem to have this. So but there's something to be said about, like, it's impossible to have this expectation of everybody all the time. But there is something to be said about maintaining or nurturing work environments where this chemistry is not disrupted. It's like, this chemistry can happen. Cool, let it happen. Encourage it. There will be, the larger the group, the more likely that some 2-3 people would click like this. Right? Encourage it. It's rare, so encourage it for that reason. What I see often, especially in startups, is they think this is so rare that it's not worth focusing on. What they need is stable baseline, and they go down to this sort of hyper individuated level, and then they get like dysfunctional, like non-teams, like administrative units of people sitting in the same code base, but they're not really a team. They don't have the same goal. And then they're sort of trying. Sorry?
No squads.
Like no squads, no pairing partners, like too much commitment. Everybody is assigned individually rather than there being like a mission. And then they're sort of trying to shovel like collaboration, on top of that. Like the fundamental structure is incompatible with teamwork, and they're trying to sort of tack on non-teamwork collaboration onto that. Because if they drive it to the extreme, it's basically too many meetings all the time, constantly, nothing's getting done. And I've seen that happen in startups, and they're very ugly because people get frustrated and angry and they shout, and it's a very weird way to work. Because everybody feels that there's an irrational pressure and push, but why are we doing this? Like if we're inefficient and it's okay, why are we pretending that it's not okay to be slow, right? Because if I'm in a Formula 1 car and I need to do the lap in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, then I'm like, yeah, I'm not taking the car that takes 10 minutes. That's 5 times slower, right? And what these organizations are doing is they are taking the 10-minute car and then screaming at the driver for being slow.
Be faster.
Yeah,
hit the gas.
Right? And this is then the state that such feature factories like devolve to, right? When you hyper individuate. And it's those buddies, it's those extreme programming pairs that are driving those fast cars. That's why they're successful.
Yeah.
But if you then assume that, okay, we can't control those conditions, so we won't support them, I think that's where a lot of companies fail. Is that, like, you don't have to control everything. Sometimes the control, the management, the vehicle of management itself, that's what's preventing those collaborations, right? And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but when you said that it didn't work when you scaled out with more junior teams, but it works very well for you and Jonathan and a few people, that's what I'm seeing, is that maybe you're used to a level of self-management with him and each other and those people around you, that if you scale that same system out to more people, that level of, like, you don't need that. For you, the management is enhancing your natural pairing. But if you apply that management without that chemistry to another pair who don't have the chemistry, in them, it prevents the chemistry from happening. And then for them, the management is just barely pulling them up, just barely pulling them up to some standard level of work that requires your constant attention.
Supervising. Yeah.
And that supervising then kills your chemistry. And then you want them gone because it's like, why can this happen? The problem is they will never get that chemistry with you. They can only have the chemistry with each other. Because like the verticality, like when you go from horizontal to like a very vertical, they have no experience being, business owners, having skin in the game, working overtime to make sure the salaries can be paid. They don't understand that. And it's very difficult to connect with them. So they need their own generation of peers to connect with. And if you grow that too slowly or with too junior people, you can end up in like a local minimum that is very difficult to get out of. And I've seen this. I've seen startups implode from this condition, do layoffs, and go back to this. And the only time they were productive is in that in between two layoffs crisis mode of, okay, we just had layoffs. We're back to that original.
You know that.
Right?
You know that very well. Yeah.
Right? Like it's
I've done that 2 times with Jonathan together.
Yeah.
And it was like, how can you put it? It's like, I don't want to be mean in any way, but it's the reality that so it is not scalable. That's throughout, right? So it is not scalable, but for what you need to do right now, it's freeing because you accelerate like a Formula 1 car suddenly again, and you feel like, whoa, that's now. It's a little bit like that, but it is, as I said, not scalable. And as soon as it gets back to the where you need to scale, where we will come to in the next month probably, then we need to implement another strategy. That's the point where this idea of chemistry needs to be, of course, prevailed, but we won't do that. And so when we scale, then we don't do it like we do it right now anymore, because there would be no point to scale then, right? So we could just stay like it is right now and live a good life. But we want to scale, which means that we need to rethink again and do it better than we've done last time. So we need to learn out of the mistakes of the past. And, there was some stuff which we were doing right. There was some stuff which we were doing wrong, and learn of those. But, it's like, those things are very contextual to the current company you have. Some companies have 20 people teams, which is not a team, it's just a large group, a company of people, right? Working mostly agency stuff. Like in reality, it's 20 isolations working together somehow. And then you have those 5 people teams, 3 people teams, but they're most often like not really like they are bound to the same context, but yet not really work in a team. Sometimes people try to implement pair programming to create those chemistries, as you said, right?
Expectations, or maybe they were sort of disconnected from somebody else's commitment.
But they're still working on different tickets. It's not like, but you can work on different tickets if you really know each other and you know the outcome, but it's most often not the case.
The big difference is psychologically, you start treating the person who's pushing down the tickets as an external stakeholder, not as an internal stakeholder. Right? So you don't negotiate with them. You're like, well, they said they need this, they're paying the bills, so as long as we're happy doing the work, we will say yes to it. Rather than an internal stakeholder that says, no, like, I have to deliver this feature to you. I can't do this your way. That's how you would communicate with an internal stakeholder. It's like, no, we made a commitment. Are you undoing the commitment? Like, no, I'm not undoing the commitment. Are you undoing the commitment? Right? So it's just pushed back the feedback cycle where it belongs. But we can talk about it some other time. I'd like to wrap here. This is a very cool discussion. Good discussion. Sorry for being late.
It drifted a little bit. Towards our old school discussions where we were in the beginning.
But I feel like we needed that.
We're
You and
talking
I,
too much
like, we
about
need-
AI agents lately, so it becomes a boring topic for me because it's standard for me, and I don't really get why so many people don't understand that topic to this
Yeah.
day and still saying, "Oh, vibe coding." But it's not about that. It's a topic which is about engineering, and it's important to understand. We should all do more, but I want to focus a little bit on other topics in the next times and not doing too much agentic on stream anymore, because if we do things, it makes sense to do it in an agentic way, but not necessarily as a standalone topic. I
Yeah,
think
it needs
it's
to be heavily
saturated.
contextualized. Yeah, so it's
Yes.
hard to translate principles so far.
Mhm.
I mean, the principles can be translated, but the principles themselves don't need the AI tool. At least, not yet. Not in a way that we could easily communicate.
Mhm.
More on this next time. I'm not sure what our next topic will be. What
We have one left, I think.
Yeah, and then we need to do a planning session. We already had some requests there about what to do with the Kaluyan's request for CGAN setups, and we had one Tim Ottinger sort of volunteered sort of to or spoke up about wanting to join or be here for discussing the topic, something that we did touch on today about why coding is not the bottleneck. Like where does the actual
Coding is not the
friction happen?
bottleneck. I still have an
Coding is
open to do that to find the
yeah.
fourth
So we need to
person.
talk to Tim. Tim, I believe, is also in the US time zone, so we would have more like a more Brian friendly schedule for the
More like a 17 CEST
yeah,
stream.
yeah, something. So we need to discuss that for the following weeks. Cool. Thank you.
And next week we have situation in the market.
Yes, that was another one you requested. If you've changed your mind,
Especially British people would be very interested. I think they are the most broken one on the European continent right now when it comes to software development.
they're not even on the European continent. Don't worry.
Which continent are they then? No, but you know what I mean. It's like I think they have the strongest issues. I see them now in the German market as well.
This is for next time.
I know. That's so interesting. So we should maybe invite someone.
Get some rest, Adrian. Otherwise, you burn out from streaming again.
No, I stream tomorrow. I stream next Tuesday. I stream next Wednesday. I stream next Thursday again. So streaming a lot.
Okay.
Right now.
I'm gonna jump off now.
Bye bye.
Thank you for today's topic and for leading the first 15 minutes. I really appreciate it.
All good.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Ending stream. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next week.